Some moments just stay with you, long after the lights are off. In 2025, my team and I investigated some truly horrifying animal encounters for Animal Quest, moments that still haunt me. We saw some of the wildest and most intense animal interactions that year. Let me tell you about one that still sends shivers down my spine. It happened back on October 7th, 2016. The affluent neighborhood of Wildwood Heights in Boulder, Colorado was still quiet in the early morning darkness. This upscale residential area, built just 5 years prior, sat right on the edge of the Rocky Mountain foothills with winding streets and modern homes backing onto open space, corridors for wildlife. Lisa Hartwell, a 33-year-old marketing coordinator, started her daily 5 a.m. jog. She'd moved to Wildwood Heights 2 years earlier, drawn by the promise of mountain living with urban conveniences. A dedicated fitness enthusiast, she kept a strict exercise schedule, often rising before dawn to complete her 5-mile run before work. This morning routine had become sacred to her, a peaceful time to clear her mind while enjoying the crisp mountain air and stunning views. But autumn that year was unusually dry. Drought conditions extended well into what should have been the wet season. Wildlife officials had issued warnings about increased animal activity in residential areas. Deer, elk, and their predators were being forced closer to human settlements in search of water. Several residents had reported mountain lion sightings, including tracks in backyards and a large cat near the community's retention pond. Lisa had heard the warnings but dismissed them as typical concerns for Colorado mountain living. She continued her runs without changing her route or carrying anything for protection, confident that her familiar neighborhood streets were safe. Mountain lions, also known as cougars or pumas, are North America's second-largest wild cat species. Adult males can weigh between 115 and 220 pounds. These powerful predators are perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain, possessing incredible stealth, speed, and jumping ability. They can leap vertically up to 15 feet and horizontally up to 45. They're primarily ambush hunters, relying on surprise attacks, typically targeting the neck and spine of their prey to deliver quick, fatal bites. That morning, as Lisa jogged through the pre-dawn darkness, she was completely unaware that a 140-pound male mountain lion had been stalking a mule deer through the drainage culvert, running beneath the street she was approaching. Lisa's approach disrupted the hunt, startling both the deer and the mountain lion. The deer bolted across the street, disappearing into the darkness, leaving the frustrated predator crouched in the shadows of the concrete drainage opening. The attack came without warning. Lisa passed within 10 feet of the culvert when the mountain lion exploded from the shadows with incredible speed, covering the distance in a single leap. His massive front paws struck Lisa between the shoulder blades with devastating force, sending her crashing face first onto the asphalt. His weight drove her to the ground. Lisa's attempts to scream were cut short as the mountain lion's powerful jaws clamped down on the back of her neck, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae with crushing force. His razor-sharp claws raked across Lisa's back and shoulders, each swipe opening deep gashes that severed major blood vessels and caused massive tissue damage. The 140-pound cat used his incredible strength to drag Lisa's body across the asphalt and down into the concrete culvert, where the darkness and confined space would provide protection while he fed. Lisa's body was recovered 3 hours later by a joint team of police officers and Colorado Parks and Wildlife personnel. The mountain lion had abandoned his kill when the search teams approached, retreating further into the drainage network that connected to the natural creek system beyond the neighborhood. Lisa had died from massive trauma to her neck and spine. The mountain lion's killing bite proved instantly fatal. The investigation revealed that Lisa had been jogging along her usual route when she inadvertently interrupted the mountain lion's hunt, triggering the attack that cost her life. The mountain lion was tracked and euthanized the following day after being located in the foothills above the neighborhood. Then there was the case of Felicity Grant on August 19, 2017. She arrived at Boulder County Open Space in Colorado, a vast wilderness area known for its rugged terrain and diverse wildlife population. This mountainous region stretched across thousands of acres of dense forest and winding trails that attracted outdoor enthusiasts. But these same wilderness areas also served as prime habitat for mountain lions and other dangerous predators. Felicity Grant, a 39-year-old fitness influencer from Denver with over 5,000 social media followers, had planned what she called her ultimate wilderness transformation experience. Known for her entitled attitude and belief that her athletic superiority made her exempt from rules, she had already caused multiple confrontations at the park entrance. Her demanding personality became evident when she berated the teenage park attendant for suggesting she read safety guidelines, claiming someone of her fitness level didn't need advice from minimum wage employees. Park Ranger Tom Bradley had attempted to brief Felicity on recent mountain lion activity during her permit application process. The area had experienced multiple cougar sightings over the previous month, including aggressive encounters that resulted in temporary trail closure. Felicity became increasingly hostile, interrupting Tom repeatedly. Mountain lions are apex predators, perfectly adapted for hunting. I've read accounts of their power, males weighing up to 180 pounds, capable of leaping 40 feet. Their claws and teeth are designed to kill with terrifying efficiency, severing the spinal cord with a single bite. It's a chilling demonstration of nature's brutal elegance. Felicity, a woman who considered herself an elite athlete, ignored all warnings. She was running alone on the Rabbit Ears Pass Trail before dawn. Despite trail close signs, she believed they didn't apply to her. She even tore down warning notices claiming taxpayers like her had the right to use public trails. She'd even had a confrontation with a fellow hiker, Maria Santos, dismissing her concerns about solo hiking at dawn as jealousy. Felicity was wearing noise-canceling headphones, blasting loud music. Perhaps most strangely, she carried raw steaks in her backpack, a protein meal for after her workout. That combination, the erratic movements, the heavy breathing, the scent of fresh meat, created a perfect storm. A 140-pound male mountain lion, already hunting in the area, detected the meat from over a mile away. He began to stalk her, using the terrain to remain hidden. As Felicity rounded a bend, oblivious to the danger because of her music and her arrogance, the mountain lion launched its attack from a boulder above. The force was tremendous. Claws raked down her back as the predator's teeth clamped onto her neck. The attack was precise. The cougar's jaws applied crushing press, severing the spinal cord instantly. Paralysis followed, and within minutes, Felicity was dead from spinal trauma, blood loss, and suffocation. The mountain lion dragged her body off the trail. Her remains were discovered 3 days later. The fluorescent lights of the county animal shelter seemed to amplify the sadness of the place. I remember reading about Jennifer Walsh, a veterinary student who volunteered there. She believed every animal deserved a second chance, especially the difficult ones. She gravitated towards the dogs marked for euthanization. Diesel was one of those dogs. A 75-pound pit bull with a history of biting, he was considered too dangerous to adopt. But Jennifer saw something else in him, a vulnerability beneath the aggression. Despite the shelter's strict protocols, she believed she could reach him with one-on-one attention. And so, one December afternoon, she approached Diesel. It was a decision that would cost her everything. I've often wondered about the moment Jennifer realized she was in mortal danger. A young woman dreaming of saving animals, only to have her life end at the jaws of one. It happened in an isolation room, a small space designed for behavioral evaluations. Diesel, a 75-pound dog, had displayed immediate and threatening reactions upon being led there. Lips pulled back, yellowed teeth bared, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling. But these signs, clear to most, were misinterpreted as fear, a fatal misjudgment. Inside the 8x10 room, Jennifer closed the door, believing freedom would relax him. Concrete walls, a metal chair, and nowhere to run. For minutes, Diesel stood rigid, eyes locked on Jennifer. She spoke gently, unaware she was being evaluated by a predator. The attack came swiftly. A step, a hand extended in peace, perceived as a threat. Diesel launched across the room, jaws targeting Jennifer's throat. Her scream cut short as teeth sank deep, severing major blood vessels. A grip unbreakable, shaking violently, tearing through tissue and bone. Blood sprayed across the concrete as Jennifer's struggles weakened. By the time help arrived, Jennifer lay motionless, her life ebbing away. Diesel stood over her, muzzle stained red, eyes burning with aggression. Paramedics arrived, but it was too late. Her dream died there, ended by the very animal she hoped to save. Diesel was euthanized, his death as swift as his attack. The investigation revealed violated safety protocols, ignored warnings. The shelter implemented new security measures. Jennifer's death became a cautionary tale, a reminder that good intentions are no substitute for experience and safety. Her family established a scholarship not for domestic animal care, but for wildlife conservation. A final acknowledgement that some animals remain fundamentally dangerous, no matter how much love they are shown. Then there's the story of Jessica Rodriguez. It was April 17, 2018, in the humid Florida air at Sunshine Primate Sanctuary, a controversial facility exploiting primates for tourist photos under the guise of rescue. 30 primates housed in substandard conditions, generating revenue through photo sessions. Jessica, a 31-year-old veterinary technician from Tampa, visited with her husband, believing it was a legitimate conservation effort. She had always been passionate about animal welfare, documenting their care through photos. Her dedication led her to a veterinary technology degree, working nights to support herself. She volunteered at legitimate sanctuaries, supporting organizations protecting great apes. She genuinely believed her visit would help promote conservation. That afternoon, Jessica participated in an educational encounter with King, a 350-pound silverback gorilla. The sanctuary's safety measures were minimal. A chain-link barrier separating visitors from the enclosure with no supervision from qualified staff. Silverback gorillas are incredibly powerful, intelligent, and emotionally complex, but they're also territorial and aggressive when threatened. I've seen the power of a gorilla's grip described in textbooks, but the reality is something else entirely. Their massive hands can grip with crushing force, and they can shift from calm to violent behavior within seconds. I remember the story of Jessica, who approached a gorilla enclosure with her camera, hoping to capture the animal's intelligence and emotional depth. The gorilla, named King, appeared calm, observing the human visitors with what seemed like curiosity. Jessica, excited, began photographing him, envisioning the conservation message she could share through these portraits. But then came the moment she decided to reach through the fence, believing physical contact would create an even more powerful image. She misinterpreted King's calm demeanor as friendliness, not realizing it was the calculated patience of a territorial animal assessing potential threats. King's reaction was instantaneous and devastating. The moment Jessica's hand crossed the barrier, the 350-pound silverback grabbed her arm with crushing strength, pulling her against the chain-link fencing. Her scream filled the air as King's grip tightened, inflicting bone-crushing force. Others tried to free her, but the gorilla's strength was far beyond human capability to overcome. He maintained his grip on her arm, while his other hand reached through the barrier to grab her head and shoulders, pulling her harder against the inadequate fencing. His territorial instincts took over, driving him to continue the assault, inflicting devastating trauma to her head, neck, and arms. Her attempts to break free only seemed to increase his aggressive behavior, as he interpreted her struggles as continued threats. Her movements grew weaker as massive blood loss and crushing injuries overwhelmed her body. King's grip never loosened as he continued to pull her against the barrier, his fury focused entirely on eliminating what he perceived as an intrusion into his domain. Within minutes, Jessica's struggle ceased. The massive gorilla maintained his grip on her lifeless form, displaying threatening behavior toward anyone who approached the enclosure. Emergency responders arrived, but it was too late. The investigation revealed the facility was operating illegally, exploiting animals and visitors for profit, with inadequate safety measures and animal care. It was shut down, and King was transferred to an accredited sanctuary with proper containment and enrichment programs. Jessica's death prompted enhanced regulations for animal sanctuaries and stricter enforcement of wildlife protection laws. Her family established a foundation supporting legitimate primate conservation efforts, ensuring her passion for animal welfare would continue through organizations that truly protect great apes. Then there's the story from March 18, 2017, in an upscale neighborhood in Asheville, North Carolina. It was the first warm evening of spring. Maria Santos, a 41-year-old single mother and part-time dog walker, was making her evening rounds through the neighborhood's winding streets, caring for the pets of wealthy residents. She'd been working as a professional dog walker for 3 years, building a loyal clientele who appreciated her reliability and love of animals. Her income helped support her teenage daughter. The development had been carved out of pristine mountain forest, but recent construction had disrupted animal movement patterns, forcing bears, deer, and other wildlife to seek new routes through residential areas. The North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission had issued warnings about increased bear activity, particularly as animals emerged from winter hibernation. Maria was aware of the warnings, but had never encountered any dangerous animals. She carried pepper spray as a precaution and had received training on wildlife encounters. On this particular evening, she was walking 3 large dogs when she noticed unusual activity near a row of garbage cans. Black bears are North America's most common bear species, with adult females typically weighing between 200 and 400 pounds. Mother bears with cubs are extremely protective and will attack any perceived threat to their offspring. I've seen what bears can do when surprised, when they feel cornered. They can run faster than I ever imagined, and they possess a strength that's almost unfathomable. They can break down doors, overturn cars, and their claws, their teeth, they're capable of inflicting devastating injuries, especially when they perceive a threat to their cubs or their territory. I remember reading about a woman named Maria. She was walking her dogs near her home when she came across a 300-pound black bear and her 2 cubs rummaging through garbage cans. The mother bear was feeding on discarded food while her cubs played nearby. Maria, recognizing the danger, began backing away slowly, but her dogs became agitated and started barking aggressively. That barking triggered the mother bear's protective instincts. She rose to her full height, made aggressive vocalizations, and positioned herself between the dogs and her offspring. Maria tried to control the dogs and retreat, but they continued barking and lunging. The mother bear charged. Maria attempted to run, but she became entangled in the leashes and fell hard onto the asphalt. The dogs scattered, leaving Maria vulnerable. The bear struck Maria's back and shoulders with bone-crushing force, driving her face into the pavement. Her jaws clamped down on Maria's head and neck. The bear's claws raked across Maria's torso and limbs, opening deep gashes. Residents heard the commotion and called 911, attempting to scare the bear away. The mother bear eventually retreated with her cubs, leaving Maria motionless. Paramedics arrived, but it was too late. Maria had died from massive head and neck trauma. The investigation revealed that improperly secured garbage containers had attracted the bear family to the residential area. Wildlife officials determined that the bear had been acting defensively. The bear and her cubs were relocated to a remote mountain area. The community implemented new waste management protocols, including bear-proof garbage containers and an early warning system for wildlife sightings. Then there was Rebecca Martinez. It was October 15, 2016, and the sun was setting over her 10-acre property, casting long shadows across the maze of kennels and chain-link runs. The constant barking of 40 rescue dogs echoed across the land. It had become the soundtrack of her life. At 34, Rebecca had spent 8 years building her unofficial sanctuary, taking in the dogs that other shelters wouldn't touch. The aggressive ones, the biters, the animals marked for euthanization. Her recent divorce had left her financially strained and emotionally isolated. She only had her dogs for company on that remote property. Her neighbors had grown used to the noise, though some whispered concerns about her. She rarely left the property anymore, moving between enclave with hands scarred from countless bites. Friends noticed the changes in Rebecca. She'd grown thinner, more withdrawn, speaking more about her dogs than anything else. Her ex-husband had tried to warn her about the dangers, but she dismissed his concerns. Even the feed delivery drivers had begun leaving supplies at the gate rather than approaching the main compound. The main enclave housed her 3 largest rescues. Rex, a 90-pound pit bull mix. Titan, an 85-pound Rottweiler cross. And Scar, a 75-pound mixed breed. What Rebecca didn't realize was that these 3 had been forming an alliance over the past few weeks, establishing a hierarchy that put them at odds with anyone who came between them and food. The warning signs had been there. The 3 dogs had begun sleeping closer together, sharing food bowls and displaying coordinated territorial behavior when other dogs approached. They'd started following Rebecca's movements more intently during feeding times, their body language shifting from grateful anticipation to something more predatory. But Rebecca, exhausted from managing 40 animals alone and emotionally invested in seeing progress, missed them. The air seemed charged with more than just humidity that day. I've thought about Rebecca's story often. She had done her feeding routine thousands of times before, but on this particular evening, something felt different. As she unlatched the gate and stepped into the enclave, her boots slipped on the muddy ground, the earth still wet from an afternoon thunderstorm. She stumbled, trying to regain her balance, but the weight of the buckets pulled her down. The metal containers crashed, spilling kibble across the wet dirt. Rex was the first to move, but as Rebecca struggled to her feet, something in his demeanor shifted. His eyes, which had been focused on the kibble, now locked onto her. At that moment, she wasn't the woman who had saved him. She was competition for resources. The attack came without warning. Rex's 90 lbs of muscle slammed into Rebecca's chest, driving her back to the ground. His jaws clamped down on her shoulder, tearing through flesh with devastating force. Rebecca's scream pierced the evening air, but there was no one around for miles to hear it. Titan and Scar joined the assault within seconds, their pack instincts overriding years of rehabilitation. Titan's massive jaws found her left arm, shaking violently. Scar circled behind, his teeth sinking into her legs, dragging her further from the gate. Rebecca fought desperately, her free hand clawing at Rex's face, trying to break his grip. But the dogs were in full predatory mode now, their attacks coordinated and relentless. Blood soaked into the muddy ground as they continued their assault, their growls mixing with Rebecca's weakening cries. The feeding frenzy lasted nearly 10 minutes before the dogs finally backed away. Rebecca lay motionless in the mud, her body broken and torn, surrounded by the scattered kibble that had triggered the attack. For 3 days, Rebecca's body remained undiscovered on the isolated property. It wasn't until a delivery driver arrived with dog food that the scene was uncovered. Animal control officers found the 3 attacking dogs still in the enclosure, showing no signs of continued aggression. Rex, Titan, and Scar were euthanized within hours, along with 12 other dogs deemed too dangerous for relocation. Rebecca's death sparked debates about unlicensed rescue operations. New regulations were implemented requiring permits for anyone housing more than 10 rescue animals. But for those who knew Rebecca, the rules came too late. Then there's the case of Camille Morel on April 3, 2017, in Thor, France. Inside the Thor Zoo Safari Park, the wolf sector adjacent to the bison paddock meant to mimic the wild stillness of Yellowstone seemed calm. Yet within the shadows of its pines, something alive and waiting stirred. A quiet rhythm of movement that would soon break that silence for good. Camille Morel was 29, a fitness instructor from Versailles who lived by routine. Known among her clients for her precision and self-discipline, she maintained the same training schedule no matter where she was. After 6 months of non-stop classes at her studio, she decided to spend a weekend at the Thor Zoo Safari, one of the few places near Paris offering guests an overnight wilderness immersion without leaving the country. It wasn't her first visit. She'd stayed once before and remembered the tranquility of waking to animal sounds instead of traffic. She booked the chalet not just for rest, but to keep her running habit intact in the open air. To friends, Camille's decision made sense. The park's trails and guest roads were well marked and safe during visiting hours. She'd read the safety pamphlet about restricted areas and believed her familiarity with the grounds made her cautious enough. Her chalet overlooked the fenced wolf sector adjacent to the bison range, a layout designed to reduce mixed-species stress and liability during guest drives. The animals were separated by natural barriers and double fence zones, and guests were told the viewing area was completely secure. Camille trusted the system. Her goal that morning was simple: a quick 2-mile jog before breakfast, the same as she did every morning at home. The zoo's landscape was a strange fusion of natural calm and controlled wilderness, pine trees in neat clusters, sandy trails, and an artificial stream running through the land. At dawn, the service road and the inner track appeared nearly identical, a known issue in drive-through parks where early light flattens contrast. Beyond the chalet's edge stretched a gravel service road used by rangers and tour jeeps. The wolves' territory extended across nearly 20 acres of wooded ground. Gray wolves, the largest of the canids, can weigh over 100 libs and run up to 35 mm for short bursts. Pack behavior revolves around cooperation and hierarchy. Most attacks on humans occur only when the animals feel threatened, cornered, or see unusual movement that triggers pursuit. In captivity, stress or broken boundaries can alter those instincts. That morning, a scheduled maintenance check had delayed some of the park's early operations. Workers had opened an internal service gate near the chalet to move a small utility vehicle through. Overnight, frost had iced the latch mechanism, preventing full engagement of the double lock. And when one of the workers received a call about a mechanical issue elsewhere, He left under maintenance override without confirming it was secure. The gate's interlock was meant to be re-engaged once staff passed, a step that failed. Around 7 a.m., Camille stepped outside with her phone and a small water bottle. She jogged down the gravel path that bordered the guest area, seeing no posted signs. I sometimes think about Camille, the jogger who unknowingly crossed into a wolf enclosure. The wolves had been fed the previous evening, but remained alert after a cold night. A zookeeper in an observation tower saw her, radioed for confirmation, then realized with horror that she was inside. He shouted for a patrol, but it was too late. At first, the wolves didn't charge. They emerged from the trees, low to the ground, tails stiff, heads aligned. Camille slowed, confused, thinking the barrier must be nearby. But when they began advancing in a slow, deliberate arc, she froze. She turned and started jogging back, faster this time. The wolves matched her pace, then accelerated. She broke into a sprint. The zookeeper watched as Camille glanced back once. Near a drainage trench, her foot caught on the uneven gravel, and she fell. Before she could push herself up, the lead wolf clamped down on her right thigh, pulling backward. She twisted, trying to kick free, but another wolf lunged at her shoulder. Her scream carried across the enclosure. The zookeeper sounded the alarm and radioed the rangers. The response vehicle was rerouted, delaying arrival to just under 10 minutes. Within normal range for an emergency call, they said later. 2 more wolves joined, surrounding her as she tried to crawl toward the ditch. The lead wolf released and re-gripped higher, its teeth sinking into her hip. She struck out with her hands, scraping the gravel, trying to push herself forward, but one of the animals bit into her arm, shaking until it tore free. Within moments, she was on her back, thrashing as the pack pulled from opposite sides. She kicked weakly once more, then went still. Rangers arrived within 10 minutes in a vehicle. They found the wolves clustered over Camille's body, heads low and jaws working. Warning shots sent the pack scattering into the trees. 2 rangers approached as another called for a tranquilizer team. Camille lay on her side, clothing torn, deep bites from shoulder to thigh. 1 ranger checked for a pulse and found none. They covered her with a thermal blanket and secured the area until all 5 wolves were sedated. An autopsy confirmed death by exsanguination, massive blood loss due to multiple deep lacerations, and crushing trauma to the limbs. The body was transported under escort to Versailles. That afternoon, Camille's family filed a civil lawsuit against the Thory Zoo Safari and its parent company, alleging gross negligence and breach of safety protocol. After a year of investigation and hearings, the court ruled in favor of the family. The park quietly settled without appeal. Following the incident, a criminal negligence inquiry and an independent enclosure audit were conducted. Thory Zoo Safari implemented procedural retrofits, installing interlocks and alarms that trigger if any gate remains unlatched for more than 15 seconds. It was July 22, 2016, and the scorching Oklahoma sun beat down on the dusty grounds of Wild Art Big Hat Sanctuary, a privately owned facility nestled among rolling hills 30 miles outside Tulsa. The 50-acre property housed over 20 rescued lions, tigers, and other exotic cats in a collection of chain-link enclosures that stretched across the rural landscape. The afternoon air shimmered with heat, while the distant sounds of roaring and pacing echoed from various habitats as the cat sought shade from the oppressive summer temperatures. Ashley Martinez, a 23-year-old college student from Dallas, had discovered the sanctuary through social media while road tripping with her boyfriend Jake through Oklahoma's quirky roadside attractions. Ashley was constantly seeking unique photo opportunities for her personal memories, having grown up taking pictures at every family vacation and special event. Her phone was filled with daredevil shots from cliff edges, abandoned buildings, and extreme sports activities that showcased her fearless personality to friends and family. Ashley had grown up in suburban Dallas as the youngest of three sisters, developing a competitive streak that drove her to constantly push boundaries and seek attention through increasingly dramatic stunts. Her psychology major at Texas Tech University had given her confidence in reading people and situations, but her academic knowledge didn't extend to understanding animal behavior. That afternoon, Ashley and Jacob paid the sanctuary's fee for a close encounter experience that promised visitors the chance to observe big cats during feeding demonstrations and educational presentations. The facility operated in a legal gray area, offering interactions that legitimate zoos and accredited sanctuaries would never permit. African lions are apex predators that retain all their wild instincts regardless of human contact or hand-rearing. Adult males can weigh up to 420 pounds and possess incredible strength, speed, and territorial behaviors that make them extremely dangerous in captivity. Lions are social animals with complex hierarchies, but they view humans as either threats to be eliminated or prey to be consumed. Their powerful jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 650 pounds per square inch, while their razor-sharp claws can inflict fatal wounds with a swipe. I've seen photos that still haunt me. A woman crouched next to a lion, phone extended for the perfect selfie. What she didn't realize, in that instant, was that she was triggering millions of years of evolutionary programming. To Caesar, the 400-pound African lion, she was no longer a tourist, but prey. Ashley's story is a stark reminder of the respect and distance that wild animals demand. She was visiting a sanctuary, and as the tour ended, she saw her chance. She asked Jake to distract the owner while she climbed over the barrier for a photo with Caesar. Jake engaged the owner, and Ashley quietly approached Caesar's enclosure, climbing over the 4-foot chain-link fence. The lion, resting about 10 feet away, watched her. At first, he showed no immediate signs of aggression. As Ashley crouched down and moved closer, Caesar's demeanor shifted. His ears flattened, his tail twitched. The attack was sudden and explosive. The lion launched himself, covering the distance in a single bound. Her phone flew from her hand as Caesar's paws struck her chest. His claws tore into her torso and shoulders. His jaws clamped down on her neck, his teeth puncturing muscle and vertebrae. Territorial instincts drove Caesar to continue the assault. Jake's screams brought the sanctuary owner running, but intervention was too dangerous. Ashley's movements ceased within minutes. The investigation revealed the facility lacked proper permits and violated safety regulations. Caesar was relocated. Ashley's university implemented enhanced safety education, and the incident led to stricter regulations for exotic animal facilities. It's a tragic case, but I find myself also thinking about Giovanni Russo. It was May 21, 2018, in Gran Paradiso National Park, northern Italy. He was an alpine guide, leading trekking tours with his wife, Elena. He considered himself part of the balance between humans and wildlife, but that balance can be fragile. I've always found it unsettling how quickly life can vanish. One moment, Giovanni was there, and the next, he was gone. A blood pool marking the spot where he fell. The other clients, trapped in their shelter, could only watch as he collapsed, the victim of a wolf attack. His wife, Elena, reacted instantly, swinging a torch to drive the wolves away, but it was too late. The rangers arrived before sunrise, finding his body partially covered by Elena's jacket. The left side of his neck was a mess of deep, crushing injuries. It was determined that a freak twist had caused a fatal tear when the wolf had hold of his arm. Officials called it a food-provoked escalation involving juveniles, and while a monitoring program was put in place, no culling was ordered. 5 days later, Giovanni was buried in Aosta. Not long after, on July 15, 2016, the Lawson family arrived at Sundarbans National Park in West Bengal, India. This vast mangrove delta, where the Ganges meets the Bay of Bengal, seemed to stretch on forever. The ancient mangrove trees rising from the brackish water created a landscape of tidal channels and dense vegetation, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but also one of the world's most dangerous ecosystems. Genevieve Lawson, a 42-year-old real estate agent, had booked the most expensive tour. She was, by all accounts, a demanding woman, unwilling to accept limitations. She'd already berated their guide, Ravi, multiple times. Her husband, David, tried to calm her, while their teenage children, Emma and Jake, watched with growing unease as their mother dismissed every safety warning. Ravi, despite his 15 years of experience, was intimidated by her constant threats and demands for closer encounters with the wildlife. The boat was equipped with safety barriers, but Genevieve saw them as obstacles, preventing her from getting the photographs she wanted. The Sundarbans are home to the world's largest population of Bengal tigers, apex predators uniquely adapted to this aquatic environment. Unlike their mainland cousins, these tigers are exceptional swimmers and are known to hunt humans in water. They can weigh up to 400 pounds and mia over 10 feet long, with 4-inch canine teeth capable of crushing windpipes. Their striped coats provide perfect camouflage in the dappled shadows of the mangrove forest. During the afternoon tour, Ravi spotted fresh tiger tracks along a narrow channel. He cut the engine and whispered for silence, explaining that a large male tiger had recently passed through the area. But Genevieve, frustrated by the distance, declared she needed closer photographs. Despite the protests, she stepped over the safety barrier and into the chest-deep water. Unbeknownst to them, a 400-pound male Bengal tiger had been resting nearby, detecting their boat's engine. These tigers are ambush predators, using water to hunt, approaching prey silently. This particular tiger had killed humans before. It slipped into the water and began swimming toward Genevieve, with only its eyes and nose visible. As Genevieve photographed the tiger tracks, she was completely unaware of the approaching predator. The tiger closed the final 20 feet underwater, and the attack was explosive. The tiger surfaced directly behind Genevieve and clamped its jaws around her throat, its 4-inch teeth crushing her windpipe with over 1,000 pounds of force. The tiger's signature killing technique involved suffocating prey by crushing the throat. Genevieve's body went rigid as major blood vessels in her neck were severed. The tiger then began pulling her backward into deeper water while maintaining its crushing grip. I find myself haunted by the image of Genevieve, a life extinguished in the mangroves, crushed windpipe, severed arteries, forced submersion. The tiger held her under until blood loss and oxygen deprivation took her consciousness, and then several minutes more. It was November 15, 2016, in the remote forests of Primorsky Krai, eastern Russia. Snow fell, a steady veil muting the usual sounds. Nikolai Baranov's radio had been silent since morning. He was 52, a forestry worker who managed patrols, monitoring traps, logging boundaries, and poaching activity near the Cody Allen Mountains. He lived alone near Dalner, his life built around the forest. That week, he was surveying a hunting reserve after reports of wolves nearing villages. He rode out before dawn on his snowmobile with bread, tea, a hand axe, and flares. He preferred working solo, claiming a second engine scared wildlife. His assignment was simple: document animal tracks after the first full snow. Wolves were increasingly active, driven from higher ground after a collapse in wild boar numbers. Here, wolves could travel up to 20 miles in a single night. Their diet shifted with the season: deer in autumn, carrion, smaller mammals. In winter, when prey vanished beneath ice, instinct sometimes blurred into desperation. A human scent might trigger the same ancient reflex to follow, test, and close the distance. Locals warned of animals following sled trails at dusk. Nikolai heard the warnings that morning, but didn't take them seriously. He checked his flare gun but left his rifle behind, citing its weight. By noon, the weather shifted: gusting snow and dropping visibility. His supervisor tried to radio him, assuming battery failure. When evening came and Nikolai hadn't returned, Yevgen, a neighboring ranger and longtime friend, prepared to follow his route. He rode out around 5 p.m. with a flashlight and a sidearm. Tracks were faint but visible, a single snowmobile line winding north, then stopping abruptly about 800 meters from the ridge. The engine was half buried in snow, its headlight faintly glowing. Prints showed Nikolai had dismounted. Around the site, paw marks, deep and overlapping, circled. The snow bore drag lines. The circle tightened. From that point, the scene unfolded as a sequence of struggle. Human footprints turned erratic, moving backward. A snapped branch at chest height, a torn glove 10 feet away. A smear of blood marked the snowmobile's side panel. 30 feet beyond, the snow showed clear impressions of multiple bodies pressing down. Wolves and man. They had likely approached silently, using the cover of snowfall and wind. Initial bites were to the legs, pulling him down. Blood spray against nearby birch bark indicated arterial injury. Bite patterns indicated coordinated restraint from multiple angles. His jacket was shredded along the spine, showing where one animal had clamped onto his back while another tore at the neck. Boot prints ended mid-stride, replaced by drag marks. Yevgen followed them cautiously, revolver drawn. The forest was unnervingly still. He found the body 30 meters downhill near a frozen stream. The snow around it was flattened and red. The wolves had likely fed briefly before retreating. The surrounding prints showed at least 4 individuals, 2 larger adults, 2 smaller juveniles. Yevgen radioed the base. It took nearly an hour for a snow vehicle to arrive. The men lifted the body onto a tarp, careful not to disturb the bite patterns. The stench of blood lingered even in the cold. The pack didn't return, but distant howls echoed as the rescuers secured the area. Nikolai's remains were taken to Dalner for examination. Autopsy confirmed catastrophic blood loss with multiple punctures to major vessels and crushing trauma to the neck vertebrae. Time of death was estimated shortly after the onset of the attack. The official report listed predatory behavior exacerbated by winter scarcity. Specialists noted a decline in prey density across the region that year. The incident received a single mention on regional news, framed as a tragic encounter during severe weather. There was no footage, only photographs from the recovery team that were never released publicly. It was June 14, 2015, and the Sunset Lake subdivision in suburban Tampa, Florida, was settling into another warm summer evening. Walter Walt Kowalski, a 67-year-old retired plumber from Ohio, was enjoying his 5th year in the Sunshine State from his backyard patio, which overlooked one of the community's scenic waterways. There's something about alligators that has always fascinated me, perhaps because they've remained virtually unchanged for over 200 million years. Perfectly adapted as ambush hunters, they are a testament to the power of evolution. Adult males can reach 14 feet in length, weighing over 1,000 lbs. Their jaw muscles exert over 3,000 lbs of pres per square inch. I once read a story about a man named Walt, and it stayed with me for days. He had moved to Florida after selling his plumbing business, drawn by the promise of year-round golf and outdoor living, something impossible during Ohio's harsh winters. He bought a modest ranch home with water access, complete with a private dock. His evening routine involved sitting on his patio, watching the sunset and tossing breadcrumbs to the waterfowl. The Sunset Lakes community where Walt lived had been built on reclaimed wetlands. Developers had created an elaborate system of retention ponds and canals to manage stormwater. These waterways were connected to natural creek systems that flowed into Tampa Bay, allowing wildlife to move freely. Recent heavy rains had raised water levels, bringing increased wildlife activity to residential areas. Walt had noticed more alligators, but like most Florida residents, he had learned to coexist with them. His regular duck feeding had created a reliable food source, attracting waterfowl from throughout the area. Alligators are opportunistic feeders, consuming anything they can overpower: birds, fish, mammals, and occasionally humans who venture too close. One evening, Walt was relaxing on his patio when he noticed his favorite fishing lure had become tangled in the vegetation near his dock. He waded into the knee-deep water, using a long-handled net to free the snagged lure. He'd done this many times without incident, confident that the shallow water was safe. But this time was different. The attack came from directly beneath Walt as he stood in the canal. A 12-foot male alligator, submerged motionless near the dock for over an hour, exploded upward with devastating force. The massive reptile's jaws clamped down on Walt's right leg, the bite instantly fracturing his femur and severing major arteries. The alligator immediately initiated his signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining his grip. The violent rotation dislocated Walt's hip and pulled him fully into the canal. The alligator dragged Walt toward the deeper center, where his superior swimming ability made escape impossible. Within minutes, Walt's movements ceased as drowning and blood loss overwhelmed him. Emergency responders arrived within 10 minutes of the call, but the alligator had already retreated with Walt's body. The investigation revealed that Walt's regular duck feeding had inadvertently attracted the large alligator, creating a dangerous situation. Walt's death prompted immediate changes to the community's water safety protocols, including the installation of warning signs around all retention ponds and canals. It was September 8, 2014. On that same day, far away from Sunset Lakes, the vast wetlands of the Florida Everglades stretched endlessly under the afternoon sun. Their sawgrass prairies and cypress swamps teemed with wildlife. The remote waterways near Tamiami Trail buzzed with the activity of airboat tours carrying tourists into alligator territory. Michael Chen, a 35-year-old software engineer from Seattle, was on his first visit to Florida as part of a cross-country road trip. Michael had always been fascinated by technology and outdoor adventure, spending his weekends hiking in the Pacific Northwest. His engineering background gave him confidence in analyzing risks, but his experience with dangerous wildlife was limited to bears and mountain lions that could be avoided through precautions. Michael had grown up in urban Seattle, developing his love of nature through camping trips with his father and uncle. His methodical approach had made him successful, but it had also given him perhaps too much confidence in his ability to assess dangerous situations. He enjoyed taking photos of his travels to share with his family. That afternoon, Michael had joined a small group airboat tour that promised close encounters with alligators and other Everglades wildlife. The tour guide, a weathered Floridian with decades of swamp experience, had repeatedly warned passengers to remain seated and keep their hands inside the boat. Alligators. They're ambush hunters perfectly adapted for their aquatic environments. Adult males can reach over 14 feet in length and weigh more than 1,000 pounds. What I find truly astonishing is that their jaw muscles can exert over 3,000 pounds of pres per square inch. I remember reading about a particularly tragic incident. An airboat tour was going smoothly when the guide spotted a massive alligator sunning itself on a mudbank. It was an exceptional specimen, easily 12 feet long and weighing over 800 pounds. A man named Michael began photographing it, excited to capture images of such an impressive animal. But his enthusiasm overcame his caution. He leaned farther over the boat's edge to get closer shots. The fatal moment came when Michael's phone slipped from his grip and began falling toward the water. Without thinking, Michael lunged forward, desperately trying to catch his device. The alligator, which had been patiently monitoring the boat, saw Michael's sudden movement and attacked. The 800-pound reptile exploded from the mudbank with terrifying speed. Its powerful tail propelled it through the water like a missile, aimed directly at Michael's exposed position. The alligator's massive jaws clamped down on Michael's outstretched arm with bone-crushing force. Its 3,000 pounds of bite press instantly shattered bones and severed major arteries. Michael's scream echoed across the swamp as the reptile's momentum pulled him completely over the side of the airboat and into the murky water. The tour guide and other passengers grabbed desperately at Michael's legs, trying to pull him back into the boat, while the alligator maintained its crushing grip on his arm. The alligator immediately began its signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining its grip. Michael's struggles grew weaker as the combination of blood loss, crushing injuries, and drowning overwhelmed him. The alligator's grip never loosened as it continued the death roll with mechanical precision. Within minutes, Michael's movement ceased as the alligator's brutal assault proved fatal. The reptile dragged his body into deeper water where it disappeared beneath the surface with its kill. Emergency responders arrived within the hour, but Michael's body wasn't recovered until the following day. The tour company implemented physical barriers around all passenger seating areas and enhanced safety briefings for future tours. Michael's death prompted his family to advocate for stricter safety regulations in the wildlife tourism industry. The incident highlighted the deadly consequences of ignoring safety warnings around apex predators and became a cautionary tale about the dangers of prioritizing photography over personal safety. It was July 8, 2017, and summer heat shimmered off abandoned lots in Detroit as Maria Santos loaded her car with dog food and water. At 28, she'd spent 5 years walking dogs by day and feeding Detroit's feral population by night. Recently laid off, she'd been spending more time in dangerous neighborhoods, trying to help animals most people considered beyond saving. The economic collapse had hit Detroit hard, leaving entire neighborhoods abandoned and creating perfect breeding grounds for packs of wild dogs. These weren't lost pets. They were second and third generation feral animals that had never known human kindness, surviving by scavenging and defending territory with savage efficiency. Maria's regular route took her through 6 abandoned lots, each home to a different pack. She knew their hierarchies, feeding schedules, and individual personalities. But the newest group concerned her the most. 6 dogs led by a large German Shepherd mix she'd nicknamed Alpha, including several animals she didn't recognize. This pack was hungrier, more aggressive, and less predictable than the others. But Maria's compassion overruled her caution. These animals needed help, and she was the only one willing to provide it. As twilight settled over the abandoned neighborhood, Maria parked near the lot where Alpha's pack had made their home. The area was a wasteland of broken concrete and waist-high weeds, perfect cover for animals that had learned to hunt and hide. Maria had been feeding this pack for 3 weeks, always maintaining a safe distance, but tonight felt different. The dogs seemed more agitated, their movements more coordinated, their attention more focused on her than the food. What she didn't realize was that pack dynamics had shifted with the addition of 3 new dogs. animals that saw humans not as providers, but as competitors. Alpha emerged from the shadows first, his 80-pound frame moving with predatory grace. Behind him came the others, a scarred pit bull mix, 2 smaller dogs, and 3 newcomers whose breeds were impossible to determine. Their eyes reflected the dim streetlight like mirrors. Maria began distributing food as always, tossing handfuls of kibble in different directions to prevent fighting. But tonight, the strategy backfired. Instead of dispersing to eat, the dogs began to see. I've always been drawn to stories where the line between domestic and wild blurs, where animals remind us of the raw power that still exists just beneath the surface. The story of Maria in an abandoned neighborhood is one that haunts me. A pack of 6 dogs, seemingly domesticated, turned on her with devastating force when she tried to break up a fight. Their attack wasn't random. It was a coordinated assault, revealing generations of predatory instincts honed by urban survival. These weren't pets gone bad, but wild animals who saw humans as either threats or prey. Maria's screams went unheard in that desolate place. It took 3 days to capture the dogs, and they were euthanized, their wild nature deemed impossible to rehabilitate. Then there's the story of Kendra Sullivan. It was September 8, 2015, when she arrived at the Nimba Island Chimpanzee Sanctuary in Uganda. The sanctuary, a 100-acre forested island on Lake Victoria, was a refuge for orphaned and rescued chimpanzees, offering a semi-natural environment for these intelligent primates to live in social groups. Kendra, a 35-year-old wildlife photographer, had been commissioned to document the rehabilitation work. She was known for her fearless approach, having built a reputation capturing intimate portraits of domestic and farm animals. Her experience with horses, cattle, and even aggressive bulls had led her to believe she possessed an innate understanding of animal behavior that transcended species. Her best friend, Amy Chen, a documentary filmmaker, accompanied her. But Dr. James Mukasa, the sanctuary's director, grew concerned as Kendra dismissed his safety briefings, demanding access to restricted maintenance areas for better photographs. Peter Sally, a caretaker, repeatedly warned about the unpredictable nature of these powerful animals, but Kendra brushed off his concerns as overcautious superstition. The sanctuary housed 49 rescued chimpanzees, many traumatized by poaching or the illegal pet trade. Despite their rehabilitation, these animals retained all the instincts and physical capabilities of their wild counterparts, making them extremely dangerous without proper barriers. Chimpanzees are among the most powerful primates, possessing strength about 5 times greater than an adult human. Adult males can weigh up to 150 pounds and stand over 4 feet tall, with massive chest muscles and arms capable of exerting tremendous force. Their hands possess grip strength exceeding 2,300 pounds per square inch, enough to crush bones with ease. And most notably, they possess large canine teeth over 2 inches long, designed for both defense and establishing dominance. During the afternoon tour, Kendra grew increasingly frustrated with the viewing restrictions that prevented her from capturing what she considered authentic behavioral documentation. She had specifically requested access to maintenance areas where staff entered the enclave for cleaning and medical care. Dr. Makaza repeatedly explained that these areas were strictly off-limits due to the extreme danger posed by direct contact with the chimpanzees. While the group was observing chimpanzees in a distant enclave, Kendra noticed an unlocked gate leading to a maintenance corridor that provided direct access to the animal's living area. Despite explicit warnings, she slipped away from the group and entered the restricted zone, believing her experience with domestic animals had prepared her for any situation. The maintenance area brought Kendra within direct reach of Bozau, the sanctuary's dominant male, a 150-pound adult who had been rescued as an infant 15 years earlier. Bozo had shown aggressive tendencies toward unfamiliar humans and was considered one of the most dangerous animals in the facility. The powerful chimpanzee was resting near the barrier when he detected Kendra's presence. Chimpanzees are highly territorial animals that view unfamiliar humans as potential threats. Bozo immediately became agitated by Kendra's intrusion into what he considered his territory. When she approached the barrier and raised her camera to photograph him, Bozo interpreted this action as a direct challenge to his dominance. The powerful primate's response was immediate and devastating. Bozo lunged forward and grabbed Kendra's extended arm with crushing force, his grip strength of one. I've seen the aftermath of chimpanzee attacks. The damage they can inflict is almost beyond comprehension. I once read about a woman named Kendra who was attacked by a chimpanzee named Bozo. The chimp grabbed her, immediately fracturing the bones in her forearm. He pulled her against the barrier with tremendous force. Chimpanzees, I learned, instinctively target faces, hands, and genitals during aggressive encounters. Bozo's canine teeth, over 2 inches long and razor-sharp, tore into Kendra's face and neck. His powerful hands ripped at her clothing, and his feet kicked violently at her torso. The attack lasted nearly 2 minutes. Bozo bit and clawed at her face, neck, and upper body, crushing facial bones and tearing away large sections of skin and muscle. The chimp's sharp teeth severed major blood vessels in her neck, causing massive bleeding. Kendra's attempts to defend herself were futile against the chimpanzee's overwhelming strength. Her free hand was severely mutilated by Bozo's bites, several fingers crushed by his powerful jaws. Someone heard Kendra's screams and used high-press water hoses to drive Bozo away. By the time the chimpanzee retreated, Kendra had suffered catastrophic injuries to her face, neck, hands, and arms. The massive blood loss from severed arteries, combined with shock from her traumatic injuries, proved fatal within minutes. Kendra died from hypovolemic shock and facial trauma before emergency medical services could reach the remote island location. The investigation focused on security failures. It was February 9, 2014, near Langs, Saskatchewan. The morning light filtered slowly through the northern boreal forest. For 2 men setting out that day, it seemed like another routine trip into familiar woods. But without warning, it would turn into something neither had imagined possible. David Lasky was 45, a part-time wildlife photographer. He lived just outside Prince Albert with his wife and teenage son. He'd spent years tracking animal behavior through remote cameras, learning to move silently and read patterns in the snow. Photography was both his passion and side income. His real job was at a lumber supply store, but weekends were for the woods. His cousin Jeff, 42, often joined him on winter runs to retrieve SD cards from trail cams. They had grown up hunting and fishing together, though neither carried a firearm anymore. That weekend, after a light snowfall, late-season hunger had made local deer scarce, and David wanted to check a set of cameras he'd left by a frozen creek north of Susku Lake. They'd heard distant howls before, never close, and David believed wolves avoided humans by instinct. The plan was simple. A 2-hour ride by snowmobile, a short hike to the cameras, and back before dusk. Wolves in the region were typically gray, thick-coated animals averaging about 90 pounds. They moved in tight family groups of 4 to 8. Their strength lay in coordination, silent pursuit, strategic circling, and patience rather than outright speed. Under normal conditions, they avoided people entirely, focusing on deer and moose along the forest edges. The men dressed in insulated gear and carried only a single red flare for safety. By 9:30 a.m., they parked their snowmobile near the creek and began walking the last half-mile through packed snow, their breath hanging in the still air. At first, everything was normal. They reached the first camera, brushed off the lens, and swapped the SD card. Around 10:15, as they crossed the creek, Jeff's boot slipped on a patch of crusted ice. David crouched to help him up, steadying his cousin by the arm. That was when both noticed faint movement among the tree line across the creek. The animals stood still at first, only their eyes catching light. Jeff straightened and waved his arms, shouting to scare them off. The wolves didn't run. Unbeknownst to the men, a freshly killed deer lay half buried in snow about 20 yards behind the tree line. A cached carcass the wolves had dragged there the night before. The pack was food-stressed, defending the cache rather than hunting. They began to fan out slowly, forming a loose semicircle. David muttered that they were just curious that noise would drive them away. But even as he spoke, one of the wolves lowered its head and started advancing. The men began backing up the slope toward their snowmobile, moving quickly but without turning. The wolves followed, quiet and steady. Then the first lunge came. A gray blur across the ice, jaws clamping onto the back of David's leg. The impact drove him face first into the snow. Jeff spun and reached for the flare, but his gloves fumbled with the cap. 2 more wolves broke from the trees, bounding fast, their paws sending up bursts of white powder. David tried to kick free, leaving streaks of blood against the snow. He managed to roll onto his back and swing an arm, hitting one wolf across the muzzle with his camera bag, but another struck from the side, teeth finding his shoulder. Jeff finally snapped the flare to life, the red flame hissing. He swung it toward the animals. One wolf snarled and darted back, fur singed along its flank, but the others held ground. David was on his knees now, one hand pressed to his thigh, blood pumping dark and fast through his fingers. He tried to rise, but his leg gave out beneath him. Jeff charged forward with the flare, yelling, waving it more aggressively. The heat drove them back momentarily, circling just out of reach. David slumped sideways. I've spent years studying the intersection of human behavior and the natural world, but some stories still shake me. The story of David and Jeff is one of those. To think that a simple hike could turn so deadly so quickly. It's a reminder of the wildness that still exists, even in our familiar landscapes. Jeff swung the burning flare hissing in his hand, forcing the wolves back just enough to hesitate. They retreated into the trees, growling, vanishing. He pressed on his cousin David's wound, but it was too deep. Within a minute, David's movement stopped. Jeff pulled David's camera bag close and used his phone to call for help. The reception cut in and out, but a faint intermittent signal reached a nearby ranger station. Authorities arrived about 40 minutes later by snowmobile. They found Jeff sitting beside the body, shaking uncontrollably. Wolf tracks surrounded the site in a broad ring, with drag marks leading back toward the tree line and the cached deer carcass. The official report listed cause of death as exsanguination from femoral artery trauma, consistent with large animal bites. Provincial conservation officers, assisted by federal wildlife agents, closed the area within the hour. Samples were taken from bite margins for DNA analysis, and the implicated pack was later trapped and relocated to a remote management zone north of Reindeer Lake. Wildlife biologists suggested the wolves had been defending a food cache, not actively hunting, but the distinction mattered little to those who saw the aftermath. Then, just a few years later, on December 9, 2018, the hillside community of Canyon Vista in suburban Los Angeles was experiencing an unusually warm winter evening. This residential development was built where urban sprawl met the wild chaparral of the Santa Monica Mountains. Homes perched on steep slopes offered spectacular views of the city below. Kevin Chen, a 16-year-old high school junior and varsity basketball player, was running late after practice. He decided to take his usual shortcut through an undeveloped lot, rather than follow the longer route along the main road. Kevin was an honor student and star athlete, balancing academic excellence with athletic achievement. He earned recognition as one of his school's most promising college prospects. He lived with his parents and younger sister in a modern home that backed up against the natural open space that made Canyon Vista such a desirable address. Kevin often used the informal trails and vacant lots to move quickly between his home and school, a practice that had never caused any problems during his 4 years in the neighborhood. But the Canyon Vista area had been experiencing increased wildlife activity, following a series of devastating wildfires that had burned thousands of acres in the surrounding mountains. The fires had displaced numerous predators, forcing them to seek new territory and food sources in areas they had previously avoided. Local authorities had issued warnings about mountain lion sightings in residential areas, but most residents viewed these as routine precautions rather than serious threats. Kevin was aware of the wildlife warnings, but had never encountered any dangerous animals during his frequent use of the neighborhood's informal trail system. He carried his basketball gear in a backpack and typically moved quickly through the undeveloped areas, confident that his familiarity with the terrain and his athletic ability would keep him safe from any potential threats. Mountain lions are solitary predators that require large territories to support their hunting needs, with adult males controlling ranges of up to 100 square miles. Juvenile males are particularly dangerous as they establish new territories, often displaying more aggressive behavior than experienced adults. These young cats are less skilled at hunting natural prey and may target easier victims, including domestic animals and occasionally humans. Mountain lions are capable of incredible stealth and can stalk prey for extended periods before launching surprise attacks from close range. As Kevin jogged through the overgrown vacant lot, he was unaware that an 80 lb juvenile male mountain lion had been using the area as a hunting ground for domestic cats and small dogs that wandered from nearby homes. The young cat had been displaced from his natal territory by an older, more dominant male, and was desperately seeking to establish new hunting grounds that could support his survival. The mountain lion had been stalking Kevin for several hundred yards, moving silently through the dense brush while staying downwind to avoid detection. The cat's hunting instincts were triggered by Kevin's size, movement pattern, and the fact that he was alone and vulnerable in the predator's newly claimed territory. The attack came from behind as Kevin navigated through a particularly dense section of chaparral. The 80 lb mountain lion launched himself from the brush with explosive force, his powerful hind legs propelling him through the air to land squarely on Kevin's back. The impact drove Kevin face first into the rocky ground, while the cat's claws found purchase in his shoulders and back. The mountain lion's jaws clamped down on the back of Kevin's neck, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae, his bite force targeting the spinal cord. Kevin's attempts to fight back with his backpack proved futile against the cat's superior strength and positioning. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Kevin's shoulders and torso, each swipe opening deep gashes that caused massive blood loss. Kevin's screams for help echoed through the hillside community, alerting residents in nearby homes to the emergency unfolding in the vacant lot. Several homeowners called 911 while attempting to locate the source of the disturbance. But the dense vegetation made it difficult to pinpoint Kevin's exact location. The mountain lion continued his attack for several minutes, driven by predatory instincts and the stress of establishing new territory. Police and paramedics arrived within 10 minutes of the first 911 call, using Kevin's continued cries for help to locate him in the brush. I've always been drawn to the points where the human world brushes against the wild. Sometimes that meeting ends in tragedy, a stark reminder of the power and unpredictability of nature. I remember reading once about a mountain lion displaced by wildfires venturing into a residential area. A man named Kevin was killed. The mountain lion fled when emergency responders arrived. He was airlifted to a trauma center, but died from massive blood loss and spinal injuries during emergency surgery. The investigation revealed that the juvenile mountain lion had been displaced by recent wildfires and was attempting to establish new territory in the residential area. Wildlife officers tracked and euthanized the cat the following day, determining that his aggressive behavior toward humans made him unsuitable for relocation. Kevin's death prompted the city to fence off all vacant lots in hillside communities and develop new wildlife management protocols for areas where urban development meets natural habitat. The Canyon Vista community implemented comprehensive safety measures, including motion sensor lighting along all informal trails, emergency communication systems, and mandatory wildlife awareness training for all residents. Kevin's family established a memorial foundation to support wildlife safety education and habitat preservation programs that reduce human-wildlife conflicts. It was November 3, 2015. On that day, the sprawling grounds of Loner Exotic Ranch stretched across 300 acres of East Texas countryside. Wealthy clients paid premium prices for once-in-a-lifetime photo sessions with dangerous predators. The private facility operated in the shadows of legitimate wildlife conservation, offering interactions that accredited zoos would never permit. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across custom-built encloses housing tigers, lions, and other big cats acquired through questionable channels. Brandon Walsh, a 27-year-old personal trainer from Houston, had discovered the ranch through word-of-mouth recommendations from clients who had visited similar facilities. Brandon was passionate about fitness and adventure, always seeking new challenges that would test his physical and mental limits. He had saved money for months to afford this unique experience, viewing it as the ultimate test of his courage and confidence around dangerous animals. Brandon had built his personal training business through dedications and hard work, developing a reputation for helping clients overcome their fears and achieve seemingly impossible fitness goals. His confident personality and fearless approach to challenges had made him popular among Houston's fitness community, though his success had perhaps made him overconfident about his ability to handle any dangerous situation. That afternoon, Brandon had paid the ranch's exorbitant fee for a private photo session with Sasha, a 300-pound female Bengal tiger who had been hand-raised from a cub. The ranch owner, a former circus trainer with decades of experience handling big cats, had agreed to supervise the session while repeatedly emphasizing the extreme dangers involved. Bengal tigers are among the world's most powerful predators, with adult females weighing up to 350 pounds and possessing incredible strength, speed, and hunting instincts that remain sharp regardless of human contact. These magnificent cats are solitary, territorial animals that can become extremely aggressive when their personal space is violated. Their powerful jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 1,000 pounds per square inch, while their razor-sharp claws can grow up to 4 inches long. The photo session began with Brandon positioned outside Sasha's enclosure, capturing dramatic shots of himself posed near the massive predator while maintaining the safety barrier between them. However, Brandon quickly became frustrated with the distance, believing he needed closer contact to create the dramatic photos he had envisioned. Brandon convinced the ranch owner to allow him closer access to Sasha, arguing that his physical conditioning and confident energy would keep the tiger calm during the shoot. Against his better judgment and all established safety protocols, the owner agreed to let Brandon enter a smaller holding area adjacent to Sasha's main enclosure. The holding area was separated from Sasha's territory by only a chain-link barrier, bringing Brandon within arm's reach of the massive predator. Brandon began posing for his camera, which was mounted on a tripod and set to take photos automatically. Brandon's fatal mistake was crouching down next to the barrier and extending his hand towards Sasha, believing that his confident demeanor would demonstrate his dominance over the apex predator. The tiger's ears flattened slightly against her massive head, and her tail began twitching with increasing frequency. Sasha's attack was swift and devastating. The moment Brandon moved suddenly to adjust his pose for another photo, the tiger's hunting instincts activated with explosive force. Sasha launched herself at the barrier with tremendous power. Her massive paws struck the chain-link fencing, while her razor-sharp claws found purchase on Brandon's extended arm. The tiger's incredible strength pulled Brandon against the barrier, while her powerful jaws snapped at his position through the fencing. The tiger's claws raked across Brandon's arm and shoulder, opening deep gashes that immediately began bleeding profusely, while her crushing grip prevented any possibility of retreat. The ranch owner rushed to intervene, using emergency protocols to distract Sasha and force her to release her grip on Brandon. However, the tiger's claws had already caused catastrophic damage to Brandon's arm and shoulder, severing major arteries and causing massive blood loss that quickly overwhelmed his system. Brandon collapsed from shock and blood loss within minutes of the attack, his physical conditioning proving useless against injuries that no human could. I've seen the aftermath of animal attacks, the kind that leaves a mark not just on the body but on the soul. It's a grim business, and I've learned that sometimes the worst tragedies are born not of malice, but of neglect and desperation. What happened to Brandon, the fitness model, was a stark reminder of that. He died from massive trauma and blood loss after being attacked by a lion during a photo shoot. Emergency responders arrived within 20 minutes, but it was too late. The ranch where it happened was operating without proper permits or insurance, violating state regulations regarding public safety. Sasha, the lion, was relocated to a sanctuary. Brandon's family filed lawsuits arguing that inadequate safety measures led to his death. But the story that sticks with me most is that of Tommy Rodriguez, a puppy mill operator in Missouri. In August 2013, the heat was thick, and so was the stench of neglect on his property. He'd been running puppy mills for over a decade, but financial press forced him to cut corners, and those corners would ultimately cut his life short. His 20-acre property was a maze of makeshift kennels, housing nearly 80 dogs in various states of neglect. He specialized in popular breeds, but the real money came from the security side of his operation. 4 massive guard dogs, 2 cane corsos and 2 mastiff mixes, weapons acquired from a defunct fighting operation and trained to be aggressive. Veterinary bills, feed costs, and facility maintenance had eaten into Tommy's profits. Increased scrutiny from animal welfare organizations forced him to operate more carefully, but he'd been cutting back on everything, even food for the guard dogs. He didn't understand that hungry guard dogs were exponentially more dangerous than well-fed ones. Hunger sharpened their predatory instincts, made them more territorial, and reduced their tolerance for human presence. The dogs had been showing signs of increased aggression for weeks, but Tommy was desperate, distracted, and overconfident. On that sweltering August night, Tommy made his final rounds of the property. It was past midnight, and the Missouri countryside was silent except for distant barking and the hum of inadequate ventilation fans. He carried a flashlight and a metal rod, but his attention was focused on financial calculations rather than the danger lurking in the shadows. The guard dogs had been without food for 3 days because Tommy had been too busy dealing with a sick litter to maintain their feeding schedule. Their hunger had reached a critical point where survival instincts overrode years of conditioning. They were no longer guard dogs protecting property. They were predators looking for their next meal. Tommy's mistake was approaching the area where he kept the guard dogs without proper precautions. Normally, he would have fed them first, ensuring their compliance before entering their territory. But financial stress and exhaustion had made him careless, and he walked directly into their domain, carrying nothing but a flashlight and false confidence. The attack began when Brutus, the larger cane corso, emerged from the shadows near the feeding area. His 125-pound frame moved with surprising silence. Behind him came the others, Titan, Rex, and Scar. Tommy realized the danger too late. As he turned to retreat, Brutus launched himself forward, his powerful jaws clamping down on Tommy's left eye with crushing force. The impact drove Tommy to the ground, his flashlight spinning away into darkness as he screamed for help that would never come. The other 3 dogs joined the attack within seconds. Tommy's end. It was a grim tableau of unintended consequences. I remember reading the report and feeling a chill, a deep sense of waste. He finally backed away from those dogs, but it was too late. Tommy was beyond help. His body lay broken, partially consumed in the dirt near the feeding area. The very animals he'd used to protect his illegal operation were now his undoing. The guard dogs, their hunger sated for the moment, retreated, their aggression undiminished. His body remained undiscovered for 3 weeks. The dogs continued to feed on his remains. The breeding operation slowly collapsed. Other dogs, trapped in kennels without food or water, began to die of starvation. The stench of death eventually drew the attention of authorities investigating reports of animal cruelty. Sheriff's deputies arrived to a scene of unimaginable horror. Tommy's remains were scattered. Dozens of dead and dying dogs filled the makeshift kennels. The 4 guard dogs were shot on sight after showing aggressive behavior. The investigation revealed the full extent of Tommy's illegal operation. Dozens of breeding females kept in deplorable conditions, puppies dying from disease and neglect, financial records showing he'd been selling sick animals to unsuspecting buyers across multiple states. The surviving dogs were euthanized due to their poor health and aggressive conditioning. Tommy's death marked the end of one of Missouri's largest illegal puppy mills, but it came at a cost that extended far beyond his own life. The animals he'd exploited for profit had ultimately become his executioners, their hunger and desperation turning them into the monsters he tried to create. Then, just a few months later, another tragedy. This one in Florida. It was August 22nd, 2014. The exclusive Cypress Point community, on the edge of the Everglades, shimmered in the intense summer heat. The gated development, built on reclaimed wetlands with artificial lakes and water features, represented luxury living in South Florida. Roberto Mendez, A 35-year-old landscaper was working alone to maintain the pristine grounds that made Cypress Point so desirable. He'd built his landscaping company from nothing, starting with a single lawnmower and expanding to serve some of the area's wealthiest communities. He took pride in his work and was known for his attention to detail. Roberto supported his wife and 2 young children through his business, often working long hours in the Florida heat to provide for his family's future. The Cypress Point development had been constructed on former Everglades wetlands. Developers created an elaborate system of decorative ponds and water features connected to natural waterways through canals and drainage systems. The artificial lakes were stocked with ornamental fish and surrounded by tropical landscaping that required constant maintenance. Recent heavy rains had raised water levels, creating ideal conditions for wildlife movement between natural and artificial water systems. Roberto was familiar with Florida's wildlife and had encountered alligators, snakes, and other dangerous animals during his years of outdoor work. He maintained a healthy respect for these creatures and typically checked water features carefully before working near them. On this particular afternoon, he was trimming decorative bushes around one of the community's smaller ornamental ponds when his expensive hedge trimmer slipped from his hands and fell into the shallow water. American alligators are perfectly camouflaged ambush predators that can remain motionless for hours while waiting for prey. Adult females typically meo 8 to 10 feet in length and can weigh up to 200 pounds, possessing incredible speed and power when attacking. Alligators are most dangerous when protecting nesting sites or when surprised by humans who venture into their territory. Their bite force exceeds 2,000 pounds per square inch, and their death roll technique is designed to disorient and drown prey in aquatic environments. Roberto waded into the knee-deep ornamental pond to retrieve his hedge trimmer, assuming that the manicured water feature was safe for brief entry. The decorative pond appeared peaceful and well-maintained, with no visible signs of wildlife activity among the carefully arranged aquatic plants and ornamental features. Roberto had worked around similar water features hundreds of times without incident. The attack came the moment Roberto's feet touched the pond's muddy bottom. A 10-foot female alligator that had been lying motionless among the decorative vegetation exploded into action, her powerful jaws clamping down on Roberto's right leg with devastating force. The massive reptile's bite instantly fractured his tibia and fibula, while her teeth punctured through major arteries and muscle tissue. The alligator immediately initiated her signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining her crushing grip on Roberto's leg. The violent rotation pulled Roberto off his feet and into the deeper center of the pond, where the gator's aquatic advantages became overwhelming. Roberto's desperate attempts to break free only triggered the alligator's instincts to bite down harder and roll more aggressively. Roberto's screams for help echoed across the manicured grounds as the 10-foot alligator continued her relentless death roll. The spinning motion dislocated Roberto's knee and hip while causing massive internal bleeding and tissue damage. The ornamental pond's clear water turned red as Roberto's struggles grew weaker with each rotation. A homeowner working in his garden heard Roberto's cries and rushed to investigate. The most powerful bite force of any living creature. That's what they say about the great white shark. Over 4,000 pounds per square inch. I try to imagine that kind of prez, the kind that can shatter bone instantly. I recently read about a woman named Tara Whitfield and her encounter with one of these apex predators off the coast of South Australia. It was March 22, 2017, and she'd arrived at the Neptune Islands, a renowned destination for great white shark diving. These remote, rocky outcrops rise from the ocean, surrounded by waters plunging to depths of over 200 feet. The area serves as a natural highway for migrating great whites, drawn by the abundant seal colonies. Tara, a 38-year-old marine biology graduate student from Los Angeles, had booked the most expensive shark cage diving package. From the start, she seemed determined to cause trouble. She berated Captain Steve Morrison and marine biologist Dr. Lisa Chen multiple times during the morning briefing, her boyfriend watching uncomfortably. Captain Morrison, with 18 years of experience, had dealt with difficult clients before, but Tara's behavior alarmed him. She demanded the removal of the protective cage, believing her premium price entitled her to unrestricted access to the sharks. When Dr. Chen tried to explain the dangers, Tara dismissed her as jealous. She seemed convinced her status and booking fee warranted special treatment, threatening lawsuits and online destruction if her demands weren't met. She even suggested crew members test the waters first. The waters around Neptune Islands were home to some of the largest great whites on Earth, apex predators ruling the seas for over 400 million years. These hunters can reach lengths of over 20 feet and weights exceeding 4,000 pounds, with massive heads and rows of razor-sharp serrated teeth. Each tooth, up to 3 inches long, is designed to slice through flesh and bone. The crew had attracted several great whites using chum. Among them was a massive 18-foot female, estimated to weigh over 4,000 pounds, feeding aggressively on the bait. Before entering the water, Tara secretly loosened the connections on her diving regulator, planning a fake equipment malfunction to justify exiting the cage. She believed she could manipulate the situation. Once submerged, Tara immediately signaled fake distress, pointing at her sabotaged regulator. Captain Morrison initiated emergency procedures, but instead of ascending, Tara swam away from the cage toward the feeding sharks, convinced she was invulnerable. Her erratic movements created the distressed prey behavior that triggers great white hunting instincts. The massive female detected Tara's panicked swimming and abandoned the chum to investigate. The shark approached from below at speeds exceeding 25 miles per hour. The assault was swift and devastating. Rising from the depths like a torpedo, the great white struck Tara from below with tremendous force. Its jaws opened, revealing rows of gleaming teeth. The impact drove Tara upward as the shark's jaws clamped down around her torso with bone-crushing prez. The teeth sliced through her wetsuit, deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite force shattered Tara's rib cage instantly, puncturing her lungs and severing major blood vessels. The shark's muscles continued applying prez while its head thrashed violently, tearing away large chunks of flesh. The violent shaking motion severed Tara's body at the waist. I've seen firsthand how quickly things can go wrong when humans underestimate the power of nature. There was the case of a woman named Tara who believed her money could control even a shark's behavior. She deliberately sabotaged her diving equipment, violating safety protocols only to be consumed by the shark in seconds. Her death, a result of massive blood loss and the destruction of vital organs, led to stricter regulations for shark cage diving. It was March 22, 2015, and the Alabama sun was beating down on Harold Thompson's property. I can almost hear the echoes of barking dogs from the kennels spread across those 5 acres of red dirt. Hank, as he was known, was 71 years old. He moved slowly between the enclos, carrying water with the confidence of someone who had spent 20 years breeding dogs. He and his wife Martha had built their Rottweiler and German Shepherd operation from the ground up. It began as a hobby but grew into a modest business, with 8 breeding females and 3 males producing litters they sold across the southeast. But age, it seems, had made Hank careless about safety. In his younger days, he would never have entered a kennel alone, especially with breeding males during their territorial phases. He knew what those dogs were capable of, the power in their jaws, the sheer speed of their attacks. But experience had bred overconfidence. The centerpiece of their operation was Brutus, a 130-pound Rottweiler whose massive frame made him their most sought-after stud. At 4 years old, he was in his prime, with a bloodline tracing back to German working dogs. His offspring commanded premium prices from buyers seeking protection animals. Recently, though, Brutus had been showing increased aggression. A minor injury to his left rear leg had left him limping and irritable, causing him to snap at Martha when she tried to examine the wound. The veterinarian had prescribed pain medication, but the dog's temperament had grown increasingly unpredictable. Martha had voiced concerns about Hank working alone with Brutus, especially given the dog's recent mood changes, but Hank dismissed her worries with stubborn confidence. He'd raised Brutus from a puppy and believed their bond was unbreakable. On that March afternoon, Martha had driven into town for supplies, leaving Hank alone with the dogs. The kennels needed cleaning. Water bowls required filling. Work Hank had done thousands of times before. Brutus watched from his kennel as Hank approached. I imagined the dog's dark eyes tracking every movement with an intensity that should have served as a warning. The animal was panting heavily despite the shade, his injured leg causing him to shift uncomfortably. Pain has a way of making even docile animals unpredictable, and Brutus was far from docile. Hank unlocked the kennel gate and stepped inside, bucket in hand, his attention focused on the dirty water bowl in the corner. He'd performed this routine hundreds of times. But this day, Brutus was different. The dog's ears were pinned back, his tail held low, his massive body coiled with tension. As Hank bent down to clean the water bowl, his back turned to the dog, Brutus made his decision. There was no growling, no warning, just a 130 pounds of muscle launching through the air with devastating force. The impact drove Hank face first into the concrete floor, his bucket clattering away as Brutus's jaws found their target. The dog's teeth sank deep into Hank's throat, crushing his windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single catastrophic bite. Hank's hands clawed desperately at the animal's massive head, but Brutus had locked on with predatory determination. The dog's powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone with mechanical efficiency. Hank's screams were cut short by the damage to his throat, replaced by a wet, gurgling sound that grew weaker by the second. Blood pooled beneath his body as Brutus continued his attack, driven by instincts bred into his lineage for generations. The assault lasted less than 3 minutes, but the damage was irreversible. When Brutus finally released his grip, Hank lay motionless on the kennel floor, his life ebbing away in the Alabama heat. Martha returned home 2 hours later to find the property strangely quiet. She called out for Hank as she walked toward the kennels, but received no response. When she rounded the corner and saw Brutus standing guard over her husband's body, the full horror became clear. The dog's reaction to Martha's presence was immediate and threatening. He positioned himself between her and Hank's body, his lips pulled back in a snarl. Martha backed away slowly, dialing 911 from her truck. Sheriff's deputies arrived within 20 minutes, but Brutus refused to allow anyone near Hank's body. After consulting with animal control, the decision was made to shoot Brutus rather than risk additional casualties. The massive Rottweiler died with 3 bullets in his chest. The investigation concluded that Hank's death was a tragic accident caused by his failure to recognize the warning signs of an aggressive, injured animal. The breeding operation was shut down, the remaining dogs relocated, and Martha was left to grieve both her husband and the animal that had been part of their family. It was September 3, 2013, near the Toklat River in Denali National Park, Alaska. By early afternoon, the wind had dropped and the landscape stood still, open and silent. The last photograph on her recovered camera was taken just 6 minutes before her estimated time of death. In that photo, a small group of wolves followed a caribou herd in the mid-distance. What began as a normal trek turned into a nightmare in Denali National Park. I find myself thinking about Sarah's parents and their short statement urging that the park not punish what it protects. Sarah, it seems, took a minimalist approach, carrying only what she trusted, relying on skill rather than gear. Her plan that week was to complete a 2-day loop near the Tlat River. The timing coincided with caribou migration, following a route where wolves were often observed trailing the herds. She carried bear spray, a GPS beacon, and enough food for 2 nights. Solo travel didn't intimidate her. She'd done it for years, often documenting her routes for small hiking blogs. The Denali backcountry zones required permits, which she had properly filed. Rangers later recalled she had asked about late-season wolf movements but showed no concern when told sightings had increased near the river corridor. Wolves had been following caribou herds migrating south, and fresh tracks had been noted days earlier. To Sarah, it was just part of the environment, one she respected, but didn't fear. Wolves in this region averaged between 70 and 100 pounds, built for endurance and speed, capable of covering 40 miles in a day. Their jaws delivered a bite force of nearly 400 pounds per square inch, strong enough to crush bone. They rarely approached people, living on caribou, hares, and ground squirrels. But when prey grew scarce or human scent carried traces of food, curiosity sometimes lingered. That week, rangers had posted advisories near trailheads, noting that several hikers reported wolves trailing them at a distance. Sarah had likely read those postings when she signed out, though no record showed she changed her route. Her confidence in her precautions was understandable. Statistically, Denali's wolves avoided confrontation. Around 4 p.m., a passing tourist group in a vehicle on the park road spotted a lone figure standing on a gravel bar below the ridge. The hiker waved, later confirmed by clothing and timing to be Sarah, before continuing upstream toward the area where her camp was located. She reached her final GPS coordinates sometime before 4:45 p.m. Tracks found later indicated she moved off the main gravel bar toward higher ground, likely planning to cut inland. The first sign of struggle began about half a mile from her tent. Her GPS unit recorded erratic movement, rapid looping, then a sudden stop. Investigators reconstructed what happened next through physical evidence and predator behavior analysis. The wolves had diverted toward her position once the herd passed out of sight. Sarah likely saw them at a distance as she deployed her bear spray once. Residue was detected on nearby vegetation. Wind readings that afternoon showed a westward shift, causing partial blowback of the spray mist. It worked briefly, driving the wolves about 20 feet back before the cloud dispersed. They began to circle again, emboldened by the fading chemical scent. One flank of the group approached from behind, following her retreat up a shallow embankment. Handprints pressed deep into the soil showed she climbed in haste. Blood marks began at the top of the slope. One wolf had likely lunged first, grabbing her backpack or arm. The straps were torn clean through, consistent with a pulling force rather than a cut. A second wolf joined, aiming lower, its bite breaking the skin along her thigh. She tried to fight back. The spray canister lay spent beside her pack, but the group coordinated, one attacking from the rear, the others darting forward. The ground at the site was churned with soil and hair, suggesting several minutes of movement before she was forced down. Analysis of tissue marks later revealed crushing bites to the neck and shoulder, consistent with a killing grip, the kind wolves used to suffocate large prey. Her jacket was shredded, and the torn sleeve recovered 20 feet away still held fragments of skin and fabric. Search efforts began that night with both ground crews and a helicopter, dispatched after rangers noted her vehicle unmoved. The aircraft spotted a disturbed patch of gravel near the Tlat Channel the next morning. Sarah's body lay partially covered by soil and debris, her left arm missing, likely carried off by scavengers after the attack. They collected the camera and other items for analysis and later confirmed through timestamps that her final photograph was taken just 6 minutes before the estimated time of death. The park temporarily closed multiple backcountry zones along the migration corridor. Genetic sampling confirmed the wolves belonged to the Tolat pack. Investigators determined the attack began as a predatory test or prey proxy response that escalated fatally. But with no repeated approach or food-seeking behavior observed, no removals were ordered. At a private debrief, rangers explained the findings to Sarah's parents. It was April 14, 2018, when Monica Barrett arrived at Everglades National Park in Florida, one of the largest tropical wilderness areas in the United States. The vast wetland ecosystem stretched across 1.5 million acres of sawgrass marshes and shallow waterways that served as home to some of North America's most dangerous predators. The park's intricate network of channels created the perfect habitat for massive American alligators. Monica Barrett, a 44-year-old divorce attorney from Miami, had booked a solo kayak tour to clear her head after a difficult custody case. Known for her aggressive courtroom tactics and confrontational personality, she had built her legal career on intimidating opponents and refusing to back down from any challenge. Her reputation for getting her way through sheer force of will had created a dangerous sense of entitlement. Tommy Rodriguez, a 52-year-old tour guide with over 20 years of experience, had immediately recognized Monica as a problematic client during the morning safety briefing. She had interrupted his presentation. I've seen the aftermath of arrogance in the wild, and it always leaves me with a sense of profound sadness. The story of Monica comes to mind, a woman who, during a guided tour, repeatedly asserted her legal background somehow made her smarter than the swamp guide. She even threatened lawsuits when he tried to enforce basic safety protocols. Park Ranger Sarah Kim, I later learned, had also attempted to explain the dangers of alligator nesting season, but Monica dismissed her warnings as mere government overreach. The timing of her visit, unfortunately, coincided with the peak of alligator breeding season. During this period, territorial males become extremely aggressive, fiercely protective of their nesting areas. Park officials typically restrict access to certain waterways, posting warning signs throughout the most dangerous zones. American alligators, you see, are among North America's most formidable apex predators. Adult males can reach lengths of up to 14 feet and weigh over 1,000 pounds. These ancient reptiles possess one of the most powerful bite forces in the animal kingdom, capable of exerting over 3,000 pounds per square inch of crushing pres. Their massive jaws contain 74 to 80 razor-sharp teeth designed for gripping and crushing prey, and they can remain motionless for hours before exploding into action with lightning speed. Tommy, the guide, repeatedly warned everyone to stay within designated channels because of the active alligator nesting season. The park had posted numerous warning signs around known nesting sites where territorial males were guarding their offspring with deadly aggression. But Monica grew increasingly belligerent, accusing Tommy of limiting her constitutional rights and threatening legal action. Despite his attempts to maintain group cohesion, she broke away from the guided tour, paddling her kayak toward a restricted lagoon clearly marked with multiple warning signs. She was determined to investigate what appeared to be interesting wildlife activity, claiming she had every right as a tax-paying citizen to explore any area of the national park. That restricted lagoon served as a primary nesting area for a massive 12-foot bull alligator, an 800-pound reptile that had been actively defending his territory for 3 weeks, having already driven off several smaller males. The presence of Monica's kayak immediately triggered the alligator's most aggressive defensive instincts. The bull alligator detected the vibrations from Monica's paddle strokes within seconds. The massive reptile had been resting motionless beneath the surface, perfectly camouflaged among the submerged vegetation. The attack was swift and devastating. The 800-pound predator launched itself from the water with explosive force, its massive jaws clamping down on the front section of Monica's kayak. The impact capsized her instantly, throwing her into the murky water directly in front of the enraged reptile. As Monica struggled in the water, disoriented and panicked, the alligator immediately identified her as a threat to his nesting territory. The massive reptile's jaws found purchase on Monica's torso, his razor-sharp teeth puncturing through her life jacket and deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite force shattered multiple ribs instantly, while puncturing both lungs and severing major blood vessels. Then, the alligator began its signature killing technique known as the death roll, a violent spinning motion designed to disorient prey and cause massive internal trauma. The 800-pound reptile rotated rapidly in the water, spinning Monica's body while maintaining its crushing grip. The violent rotation generated tremendous force that tore muscles and caused catastrophic internal injuries. The death roll continued for over a minute as the alligator spun through the water with Monica trapped in its jaws. The violent motion filled her punctured lungs with water while the crushing press prevented any possibility of breathing. Her shattered ribs were ground against each other, causing additional internal bleeding. The combination of massive internal trauma, drowning, and blood loss proved fatal within 2 minutes. Monica's struggles gradually ceased as the alligator continued its death roll. The massive reptile eventually released her lifeless body, which floated to the surface. Tommy immediately radioed for emergency assistance, but rescue teams were unable to reach the remote lagoon in time. Then there's the story of Sarah Johnson. It was May 14, 2017, and the ancient mountains of Great Smoky Mountains National Park rose majestically above the Tennessee landscape, their peaks shrouded in the characteristic mist that gave the range its name. The late spring afternoon was perfect for hiking, with golden sunlight filtering through the dense canopy of oak, maple, and hickory trees, while wildflowers carpeted the forest floor in brilliant colors. Sarah, a 29-year-old registered nurse from Atlanta, was enjoying a weekend hiking trip with her fiancé, Tom, exploring the park's extensive trail system while taking photos to commemorate their engagement celebration. Sarah had always loved nature photography as a hobby, carrying her camera on every outdoor adventure to capture memories of their time together. Her medical background had given her a practical understanding of emergency situations, but her experience with dangerous wildlife was limited. She'd been hiking throughout the Southeast for over 5 years, building her confidence and wilderness skills through countless weekend adventures with Tom. She worked long shifts at Grady Hospital's emergency department, and these mountain getaways provided essential stress relief from her demanding career, saving lives in one of Atlanta's busiest trauma centers. That afternoon, Sarah and Tom were hiking through a remote alpine meadow when they discovered something extraordinary. 2 black bear cubs playing in the tall grass while their mother was nowhere to be seen. Sarah immediately recognized this as a once-in-a-lifetime photo opportunity. Black bears are North America's most common bear species, but I've learned that a mother bear with cubs is exponentially more aggressive than a solitary one. They will attack without warning to defend their young, viewing any human presence as a mortal threat. It's a raw, instinctual drive, fueled by incredible strength and speed. A mother bear I now know can run up to 30 mph through dense forest. I recently came across a tragic case that brought this reality into sharp focus. A woman named Sarah, on an engagement trip with her fiancé Tom, stumbled upon a family of black bears. She began photographing the adorable cubs, initially from what she thought was a safe distance. But her excitement at capturing such rare footage led her to gradually move closer, wanting to get better shots. Tom repeatedly urged her to maintain distance, to leave the area, but Sarah was convinced the mother bear wasn't nearby. The cubs continued their playful behavior, wrestling and tumbling through the meadow grass while Sarah documented their every move. Her photography session continued for nearly 10 minutes as she captured dozens of images. I can almost see her there, focused on her lens, unaware of the danger she was inviting. Sarah's fatal mistake, as I understand it, was positioning herself between the cubs and their natural escape route to the forest edge. As she moved to get a better angle for her shots, she unknowingly blocked the path the cubs would take to reach safety if threatened. This triggered the protective instincts of their mother, who had been watching from the tree line. The mother bear's charge from the forest was swift and terrifying. The 200-pound female covered the distance to Sarah's position in seconds, her powerful legs propelling her massive frame with surprising speed. Her territorial fury focused entirely on eliminating the perceived threat to her cubs. Sarah attempted to retreat when she saw the charging bear, but her foot caught on a fallen log, and she tumbled backward while still clutching her camera. The mother bear reached Sarah's position before she could regain her footing, striking her with bone-crushing force. The bear's massive paw connected with Sarah's back, her razor-sharp claws raking across Sarah's spine and shoulders, while the impact shattered several ribs. Sarah's camera flew from her grip as the bear's enormous weight pinned her to the ground. Her attempts to call for help were silenced by the crushing press on her chest. The mother bear's powerful jaws clamped down on Sarah's neck, her crushing bite force fracturing vertebrae and severing vital arteries. The bear's protective instincts drove her to continue the assault until she was certain the threat to her cubs had been completely eliminated. Within minutes, Sarah's movement ceased as the mother bear's brutal assault proved fatal. The protective mother remained near Sarah's body for several more minutes, ensuring the threat was neutralized before gathering her cubs and disappearing into the dense forest. Park rangers arrived over an hour later in response to Tom's emergency call, but Sarah was already dead from massive trauma. The bear family was tracked but left undisturbed as wildlife officials determined the mother had been acting within normal protective behavioral patterns when defending her young. Sarah's death devastated the hiking community and prompted enhanced educational programs about wildlife safety and proper distance protocols. Her family established a foundation promoting wilderness safety education, ensuring her passion for conservation would continue through enhanced protection for both wildlife and outdoor enthusiasts.